on schedule, Paul Flynn has returned to us. Thank you, Paul. Paul Flynn, MP for Newport, great campaigner and brilliant questioner of government about the policies in Afghanistan, the waste of money and the sheer stupidity of the whole adventure. Paul Flynn.
Only the future is certain, the past is always changing. I wrote a book about devolution in Wales, and those were the first words in the book, trying to nail down what happened. And the message of that book was that Blair tried to trash a policy of his own government. And it's only in the last week that I realised just what a contemptible charlatan he is. Because of the way that he trashed other policies, including the hunting policy that we worked our socks off to get through. And to hear that not only deliberately put loopholes in there, we had a bet with Prince Charles that after the Act was passed, hunting would continue, and that he's supposed to have instructed a Labour minister to tell the police not to impose the Act and not to prosecute others. And this is the man that was the leader of my party. I managed to get my retaliation in first with Tony Blair in 1996 about his schools. And I speculated at the time about the genesis of New Labour, and thought if some alien species from another planet decided to take over a country, I mean, how would they do it? But they could put creatures, embryos, and grow them, develop them in veal crates up in the north of England somewhere, and feed them this special diet that grew their ambition a mile high, but stunted their idealism, but they made them very beautiful. And then you plant them in a political party, and they'd have all the applause and offices, and eventually they'd infect the host party, take over, and run the country. I mean, it was only a nightmare, but I mean, the more I see of that book, and I mean, what a moment of joy we had today to hear once again that the Stop the War Coalition has stopped the pushing of this book. Nick Clegg said, if we know this pattern here of speeches about Afghanistan, debates we've had, and they've always had one message, a message of optimism, praise for our troops, entirely justified praise for our troops, but then optimism about the drugs, everything was going well, about the victories we were scoring, and this has gone on, for 9 years, but particularly since 2006. And Nick Clegg said the other day, we've turned a corner in Afghanistan. Well, we've turned so many corners that we've been round the block 6 times, and we're still in hell. I mean, it's still dreadful, and it's not admitted, but the two expeditions to Afghanistan, when Haig went out, and then Cameron went out after, they reported to the House to tell us what happened. And we had half-an-hour speeches from them and questions afterwards, and neither of them included in their reports the very salient fact that they couldn't complete their missions. They didn't go to the places where they planned to go, the important places, the NATO headquarters in Cameron's case. And the reason they couldn't go is because of the strength of the Taliban, that they feared that the helicopter was going to be shot down. It came out again later. But it's part of the fact that both governments, have been in deep denial about the dreadful sequence of events in Afghanistan. In 2006, there was debate in this room in March of 2006, and at that time, it's hard to believe at the time, that there'd been only 2 deaths in combat, 2 British deaths, and 5 had died in accidents. And I was standing in that corner there and suggested that what we were going to, in deciding to go into Helmand, was similar to the charge of the Light Brigade in its futility. Blair to the left of them, Bush to the right of them, horror and thunder. There is not to reason why, there is but to do and die. Into the valley of the shadow of death, into the mouth of the Helmand, drove the 5,000. Now it's not 2 dead, it's 334 dead. Almost 3 times the number whose lives were thrown away in the futility of the charge of the Light Brigade. I think at the moment I believe that the debate tomorrow could be a hugely significant one. We don't want to build it up too much because we know what the likelihood of the result is going to be. But it's the start. The Canadian Parliament and the Dutch Parliament voted on their deployment and voted for an exit strategy. and that's the start of the crumbling of the NATO alliance. We haven't had such a vote in this House. We had a vote in 2001, but it wasn't one on the that was going to gain a lot of support. It wasn't a vote there on the motion. We've got a motion there tomorrow which has been amended. The amendments are done. We hope they'll be called. But this is a small step forward in the democracy of this House, because this is only the second time under the Wright proposals, which came in just a few months ago, the Tony Wright proposal, that the backbenchers can decide what subjects we're talking about. And to our great gratitude to members of that committee, they've decided that this is a subject, Afghanistan, on which MPs are not representing the views of their constituents, the views of the nation. When you have 70% of the nation, we'd like to see the troops out by Christmas, and we carry on in the same way as we did in the First World War. In the words of Siegfried Sassoon, who made his declaration against war, and said this war is being prolonged by those that have the power to end it. That's the position we're in now, and the reason it's continuing is because the politicians are looking round for a pretext to exit from there that they can spin as a victory for politicians. And if we look at the choice before us, and I think we have to face up to the points made here, not what would be thrown at us, that the chaos that would result if there is a pullout, that our choice is really between a Saigon or a DNB. We can get out in an orderly way. It's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be fair, it means dirty deals that will be done with very bad people, but there must be a deal eventually. That's how it will end. But if we do it, we start doing it now and discussing under what terms we can get out and make the best arrangements possible for the people of Afghanistan, that's far better than what happened in Saigon, when the disgust at the body bags coming home in America forced the Americans to cut and run and leave the place with the helicopters arriving at the roof. And we know the strong feeling in this country. It was a shock. Last August, I had a letter that, I still find it difficult to, I read it out to the House. It was a letter from a constituent of mine whose fiancé had been killed, and she wrote in very simple terms about their hopes for marriage, for children, for where they were going to live, and said, the awful day dawned when his cold, dead body arrived back in the country. He was the 200th soldier to die British soldier to die in Afghanistan, and that was last August. And it's now already 334, and the smiles are still there. The assurance is, we're turning corners, we're doing well. We're not. The aims are impossible. There's no chance of the Afghan army and the Afghan police and the corrupt government being able to put up any kind of a protection that many of us would respect. It's not going to happen next year, it's not going to happen in 5 years, it's not going to happen in 10 years. The whole of the country has its problems, but as was said earlier, we haven't made any progress in drugs, in corruption. We've got our own sort of ethical corruption that we bring in. We try to win friends by bribery, by huge sums of money that arrive in these these bubble-wrapped cartons that turn around, and the money eventually ends up mostly in Dubai, where people are feathering their nest, ready to move out, preparing for the inevitable. There are real hopes that tomorrow there'll be a widening of support. There was a Lib Dem MP wandered in here now who hasn't spoken on this. We're going to get Conservatives speaking openly tomorrow, and I believe there's a real chance that tomorrow's debate will reflect a wider group of people from all parties who have recognised the futility of our present policy and the urgency in having an exit from Afghanistan at the earliest possible date that's conceivable with the obligations that we have. And it will be coming, it'll start soon. It needs pressure from all of us here to redouble our campaigns as you've been urged tonight. Thank you very much.